Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about making your own number line with fractions and partitioning that number line into segments. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. If you haven't already watched the math videos for this week, please go back and watch them before moving forward in this video. The activities and the lessons in those are going to help you with this, this partitioning of number lines. So if you haven't, please go back and do that now. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. A couple days ago, we talked about counting by fractions. So here I have 0, 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, 5 halves, 6 halves. And I use pattern blocks to help me, right? 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, and so forth. And I kind of built along with that. I did the same thing here with my thirds. And this is basically your number line, just kind of sideways. So if you can count by fractions, you can do a number line. So if you're struggling with your number line, I want you to think back to these pattern blocks. Think back to maybe writing down your fractions in order, and that might help you get through this process if you're struggling a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and make a number line. As with anything that we do with fractions, it's really important that your work is neat, and if you have a ruler, use a ruler, or anything with a straight edge. I misplaced my ruler, so I'm going to use an old Christmas card from my family. So I'm going to use this because it's kind of sturdy. But it's really important that things are neat and straight so that you have equal pieces or segments in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line across my paper. Nice straight line here. So even though I don't have a ruler, I have something that can kind of help me here. And we need to know what we're talking about in terms of how big our number line is going to be. For right now, this example, we're just going to do between 0 and 2 holes. So at the beginning, I'm going to put a 0. At the end, I'm going to put 2. So whatever falls in here has to be less than 2 holes. Now the first time that we're going to do this, we're going to count by halves. So here are my pattern blocks to help us. I have 1 half, 2 halves, or 1 hole, 3 halves, 4 halves, or 2 holes. Okay, so here are my 2 holes. So I'm not going to go any further than that because I need to stop at 2. Now, I have to find kind of the middle point between 0 and 2. So I have to know what comes between or falls right in the middle, in which case that would be 1 hole. So I have to label my whole numbers first. So I labeled 0 and 2. I had to find out if there were any other whole numbers that needed to go here. And now I can start partitioning or splitting that number line into my fractions. So I have to split it into halves. Between 0 and 1 hole, if I have nothing and then I have a hole, there's going to be 2 pieces. So if I need to split this segment into 2 pieces, I need to draw a line right about here. I don't want to count the tick marks, these little hash marks, little tick marks here. I don't want to count those when we're talking about number lines. I want to count the space between them. So the space between here counts as 1 piece, and the space from here to here counts as another piece. So that first segment here is like this 1 half pattern block. The second segment here is like this piece. So 0, another name would be 0 halves. And then when I place my piece down, I now have, from here to here, 1 half. When I put another piece down, I now have 1 whole, or another name for that would be 2 halves. Now I have to continue, right? I have to go all the way from 0 to 2. So between 1 and 2, I know here's my 1 hole, and here's my 2 holes. In order to get from here to here, I have to split our number line a little bit. So I want this number from 1 to 2 to be split into halves. I'm going to cut it right in half. And I should have 2 equal pieces, just like I have 2 equal pieces right here. So I have an equal piece here and here. Again, we're not counting the tick marks. If I count the tick marks, I'm not going to get the right answer. I want to count that space in between. So if I keep counting, I have 2 halves. Now I have 3 halves, or my other name, I'm upside down here, my other name would be 1 whole and 1 half. And I continue, add another piece. So now I have 2 4 halves, or we can call them 2 wholes. So that's how we would split up our number line for counting by halves. We're going to do it again, but this time we're going to do it by thirds. Again, I lost my ruler, so I'm just going to use a straight edge, something that's kind of firm, sturdy. I'm going to go from 0 to 2 again. So I labeled my 2 whole numbers here, what I'm starting with and what I'm ending with. And are there any whole numbers that need to go in here? Yes, there is a whole number, right? I'm missing my 1. So I have to figure out where that number 1 might go. And now I need to think about those thirds that I would be building with. So I'm going to put these pieces here to help me. These are my thirds. So if I'm talking about thirds, it means 3 pieces to make the whole, 3 pieces to make another whole. So if we're splitting this number line into thirds, between 0 and 1, there needs to be 3 pieces. And between 1 and 2, there needs to be 3 pieces, 3 of those segmented parts. All right, so in between here, I need 3 as equal as I can get them pieces. So I'm going to draw 2 little tick marks. Now this is the really tricky part. I'm not counting the tick marks, right? If I count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, that doesn't match up with what I have in front of me, right? So I can't count those little tick marks. I have to count the spaces. I see 1 space, 2 space, and 3 spaces. So now I'm going to count. If I were to start counting, here I have my 1/3. Actually, I need to start with 0 thirds here. Then I have my 1/3, 2 thirds, 3 thirds, which we also call 1 whole. Oop, and now I need to continue with the rest of my number line. I'm going to partition this section into another 3 equal pieces. Okay. So now I'm going to continue counting. 3 thirds, 4 thirds, 5 thirds, and 6 thirds. I am going to go back just a step here. I had 1 whole, my 3 thirds, and I started counting from here. I have to put another name for this fraction down below. I have 1 whole, but when I added that other piece to have 4 thirds, I now have 1 whole and 1/3. 5 thirds I can also call 1 whole and 2 thirds. And then there's my 6 thirds, which is 2 wholes. So when I was splitting this number line into thirds, I have 6 different pieces because my number line is split between 0 and 2, not just 0 and 1.